appreciate you all slugging out to the end of the day here. So as a reminder, there are coffee and water and tea up here. So my name is Mike Beach. I'm the Assistant Director of Education here at the Toledo Museum of Art. I want to thank you all yet again for coming to the museum, coming to the conference. I hope that you all have enjoyed your first full day here and that you're not too exhausted that by the end of the day you won't fall face first when you walk into your hotel room tonight. So we have two different presentations going on this afternoon. The first is titled STEAM for Undergrads, Engaging STEM Students in the University Art Museum, which will feature a talk by Matsuzaki, excuse me. And then the second presentation is You Want Me to Make What? Which will be a talk by Christine Goldberg. Unfortunately, her co-presenter, Danilo, could not make it today because he's presenting at another conference. But we're thrilled to have everybody here. Again, just a few session notes, which I'm sure you all may know by heart. At this point, we do have our session steward over here, Nancy, so in case of any kind of emergency, fire, wait for Nancy to tell us to run the other way. Just kidding, right? She'll be able to help out where needed. Also, in case you have not discovered where the restrooms are in this location yet, just head out to the right, and then when you get to the registration area, the restrooms are right off of that area. Let's see if there's anything else. In case you haven't done so, please silence or turn off your cell phone. And as a reminder, we are filming all of our sessions. So again, any sessions that you don't get to attend this afternoon, we will be archiving and have available on our website after the conference. So thank you again. I appreciate it. Hope you have enjoyed your day. And please give me a hand in bringing up Kitty Matsuzaki.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for sticking around till the end. My name is Katie Matsuzaki, and my presentation in a nutshell is STEAM for Campus Art Museums, or N Museum. Is everybody familiar with the STEAM movement? What those letters mean? It's science, technology, engineering, math, with art and design inserted. Okay. So I'm an educator at the New Britain Museum of American Art near Hartford, Connecticut. But what I'm presenting today is actually the result of a research project that I undertook at the Yale University Art Gallery, shown here. Has anyone ever been to this art museum? Okay, great. Well, it's an encyclopedic art museum, much like the Toledo Museum. It spans 3 large buildings over a city block, and in 2012 it was massively renovated and reopened to great acclaim, and since then has enjoyed increased interest from science, math, public health, and other STEM classes. So my research for UAG, as it's known for short, involved surveying existing interdisciplinary museum programs all over the world, and then from those programs gleaning inspiration and making recommendations for future programs targeting the STEM disciplines at Yale. And I'd like to share those recommendations with you, all of which came to be once I realized that the real missing link between STEM and this university art museum was visual literacy. The problem that I set out to solve is that while many museums and other educational institutions have undergone successful and innovative programs connecting art and science, most of those programs simply were of a scale that wasn't replicable for the museum, the audience, and the minimal resources that I had before me. Take, for example, this project at DePaul University, where students in a Science Fellows Research Program got to take an introductory sculpture course and then worked with a professional artist to design and fabricate a steel protein sculpture called Villain. In addition to providing tactile insight into the molecular science behind Villain, it has also sparked discussion across campus on everything from public art to biochemistry. And at the Tang Teaching Museum at Skidmore College, an exhibit called Molecules That Matter provided an opportunity for chemistry students to apply their scientific knowledge to the curatorial process. The exhibit showcased 10 organic molecules that profoundly changed the world in each decade of the 20th century. So after viewing the exhibit, students chose an 11th molecule to research and present visually, arguing for its inclusion in the exhibition. Now, in the case of UA, we had neither access to a professional artist nor the means to create and display student artwork on the scale of, say, Villain. We also didn't have an exhibit that so vividly evoked relevant STEM content as Molecules That Matter. What we did have was ourselves, the museum education team, neither artists nor scientists, and a desire to make similarly meaningful connections between art and the STEM subjects within a very limited time frame, so generally just one class period, and with whatever artwork happened to be on display at any given time. So why visual literacy for scientists and other STEM students? Well, I tapped into the Association of College and Research Libraries Visual Literacy Competency Standards for Higher Education to really justify all of the activities that I'm about to present. And to quote, visual literacy empowers individuals to participate fully in a visual culture. I think we can all agree that we live in an increasingly visual culture, and the STEM subjects are inherently visual disciplines. Scientists must train their eyes to carefully observe and record phenomena. Mathematicians visualize solutions to problems and record them with shapes and diagrams and complex formulas on paper. Engineering and geometry necessitate dimensional thinking. But can 45 minutes in an art museum turn STEM students into visual thinkers? Well, maybe not, but perhaps there are already visual thinkers in the bunch for whom such an experience could lead to an increased appreciation for their studies. Or perhaps a positive experience in the museum will lead students to come back and seek out similar experiences on their own, or professors to go ahead and continue their students' visual literacy training in the classroom. Just as important as bringing STEM students into the museum is letting them know why you're doing so they can metacognitively reflect on the experience and hopefully come away from it with a confidence in their ability to look at art analytically and science creatively. To quote a student who took part in a biology through art program at Skidmore College's Art Museum. So I have 3 simple gallery exercises to present, and all of them begin with a guided visual analysis of an artwork that's somehow relevant to the theme of the exercise. So this first one, Abstractions and Analogies, asks students to explore the galleries to find artworks that resonate personally with them as visual metaphors for some STEM concept. As such, it may be most relevant for science classes, because the exercise is open-ended in asking students to conceptualize their course concepts visually and abstractly. Works of abstract art whose subject matter is vague and whose meaning is open to multiple interpretations may be a good starting point for the exercise, such as this work by Kandinsky. The visual analysis employs close looking, reflection, and conversation, and allows for a novel engagement with content, stimulation of the intellect and curiosity, and practice in careful and intentional observation. And I borrow this term, intentional observation, from Professor Anu Mitra, who has trained her business PhD students in intentional observation at the Cincinnati Art Museum. And she defines intentional observation as the conscious application of a thinking strategy when looking at a new situation requiring analysis. So they applied this to artworks. And I find that it's relational to scientific observation, that is, a rigorous activity that integrates what scientists are seeing with what they already know and what they think might be true. Scientific observation requires one to look actively, consider every detail, form hypotheses, and then repeatedly return to the object of observation to test those hypotheses by gathering evidence. And so too should the visual analysis. Examining artworks scientifically also helps to develop higher-level thinking skills of analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. In both their studies and careers, students will encounter information presented visually. And hopefully, with practice on artworks, they'll be able to better apply a careful and critical eye to all images, gleaning new insight and understanding in the process. So after the guided visual analysis together as a group, students should spend the rest of the class period exploring the galleries on their own to find an artwork that serves as an effective visual metaphor for some course concepts, such as symmetry, or the Doppler effect, or the psychology of happiness. And these concepts can be predetermined by the course instructor, or it can be left up to the students to decide which concepts they'd like to pursue. They may find it helpful to imagine that they're selecting a cover image for a scientific journal exploring their concept in depth. And this is a recent cover of an issue of Science that was exploring the topic of depression. The link there takes you to an interesting article by the art director on why he chose an abstract image for this cover and why this artwork in particular, and it's where the quote comes from. So after selecting an artwork and making that metaphor, students should then photograph the artwork, but not just by shooting it overall, because you can get those images from the website, but by zooming in and trying out multiple viewpoints to find details that most effectively communicate the metaphor that they've made. And as an extension, they might later pair their photo or photographs with an explanatory caption or essay, which is exactly what Science does for all of its covers. A recent psychological study at the Fairfield University Art Museum has shown that taking the time to photograph artworks and details in the artworks can actually increase cognitive engagement with and retention of the subject matter viewed. Provided it's allowed in the galleries, the photographing lends a making aspect to this exercise, and it gives the students something that they can take with them when they leave the gallery. So practically, this should benefit students if they ever decide to complement their own research with images. And pedagogically, the construction of visual analogies is a learning tool that challenges students to pair sensory information with knowledge, resulting in new understanding. An artist and neuroscientist named Todd Seiler has coined the term metaforming to describe this process of melding art and science through the creation of metaphors. And I encourage you to check out his website and his TED Talk, How Art Science Can Save the World. And next is sketching for scientists. Has anyone ever heard of sketchnoting? Awesome, okay. Well, sketchnoting is essentially visual note-taking. It's pairing words with simple marks, doodles, and flourishes on the page. And while this is certainly not a new thing, the term was invented by an artist and designer named Mike Rohde, who wrote this book, The Sketchbook Handbook. He has a great website as well. Rohde and legions of sketchnoters he spawned have found sketchnoting to be a great way of taking notes that is minds-on and hands-on and promotes engagement and better retention of the material long after the point at which the notes were taken. And I, for one, fell in love with this idea of sketchnoting when I discovered it in my research and thought, why not use the museum galleries for a crash course in sketching so as to introduce students to this seemingly effective process. And these are a few of my own sketch notes. They're not great, but definitely were more fun and engaging to take, and they're more interesting to look back on than my typical conference notes, which would just be line after line of text on a page. Mike Brody encourages the scanning or photographing of sketch notes, like I've done here, so that you can always have them on hand on whatever device you carry, and so that they're also shareable with others. So the exercise is a simple idea. To get students comfortable with sketchnoting, they use pencil and paper in the galleries to draw artworks in a loose, sketchy style, imitating simple artist marks. Visualization via the creation of pictures in this way brings concepts more clearly into consciousness, because when we draw, we can see what we're thinking, and others can as well. The exercise was inspired by a program called Picturing to Learn, which asked college science students to make simple drawings and illustrate concepts in these simple drawings that were then meant to be shared with a high school audience, so to become an instructional tool for a high school audience. In making their drawings, students clarified their own understanding, as well as revealed misunderstandings that their instructor could see and immediately address. And drawing in this way supports critical thinking, problem solving, and can also lead to insight. For the visual analysis before the drawing part of this exercise, I suggest artworks that reveal something about that preliminary artistic practice of sketching. So works on paper, underdrawings, preliminary sketches, even the drawings that Magdalene showed us in her keynote presentation just now that she made. These are actually circus doodles by Alexander Calder. And students should come out of the exercise with a greater confidence in their ability to capture the world and illustrate concepts through pictures on the page. It's meant to be transferable to their digital lives, so some may find that a drawing app like paper is going to be a more comfortable medium than actually drawing with pencil and paper. Now, if you're taking notes right now, I encourage you to give sketchnoting a try. And I wonder if anybody was at the Thinking Visually presentation this morning. Yeah, so Nathan, who presented, gave some wonderful ideas for different ways of using sketching and drawing in the galleries that kind of take the anxiety aspect out of it and turn it into a focused and fun and meditative practice. So I would encourage you to go back and watch the video transcript of his presentation. And see for yourself if sketching while you're note-taking promotes the engagement and retention that sketchnoters love it for. I, for one, have found that it has, and that it actually kind of parallels the age-old scientific practice of field journaling. All right, and finally, the last exercise is a spatial thinking workshop. Like Sketching for Scientists, this is a practical workshop meant to aid engineering and math students in particular in developing spatial visualization skills, which are so important for the digestion of concepts and real-world applications of these two disciplines. The artist that I chose for the visual analysis is Theodore J. Rojak, who sketched abstract objects that he visualized as 3D fabrications. And then in turn, he turned many of these sketches into actual sculptures. So any artist whose work similarly spans 2 and 3 dimensions, painters who sculpt, installation artists who work from plans on paper, would be a good entry into this exercise. It's fairly simple. Students sketch abstract sculptures or parts of them from multiple viewpoints. They sketch object transformations by rotating sculptures on the page while they stay still, and object reflections by flipping sculptures on the page. And they make cross-sectional drawings of sculpture, furniture, design objects, ceramics, basically by cutting, imagine that they're cutting a slice through an object, and what would that slice, what would the the contours of that slice look like. Now, these exercises are based on 3D spatial cognition tests, which are administered to pre-professional engineers. A professor at Michigan Technical University, Cheryl Sorby, has spent over a decade conducting research with engineering students and has found that freshmen who participate in a spatial skills course that she designed and which uses these exercises perform significantly better on these spatial cognition tests than they did before the course, and that they also have greater success at introductory STEM classes, not to mention a higher retention rate in the engineering major. And the rate of major retention was especially evident among female students who historically have tested poorly at spatial visualization. Sorby's spatial skills course was initially composed of lectures, computer labs, and problem sets. But in time, she dropped the lecture portion of the course and replaced it with self-directed workbook exercises that involved a lot of sketching. She continued to offer the original lecture format, however, and found that students who sketched performed significantly better on common quizzes that tested skill improvement at the end of each course module. Now, it's not just engineering students who can benefit from sharpening their spatial visualization skills. I'm reminded of a Yale undergraduate who likened her organic chemistry class to advanced drawing. And like any skill, spatial visualization can be taught, and there's much evidence to prove that spatializing the STEM curriculum will not only improve student performance in the short term, but will increase the likelihood that STEM classes give way to STEM majors, which in turn give way to rewarding STEM careers. So all of these exercises emerge from my quest to solve the problem of how to meaningfully and intellectually engage STEM students in the art museum setting. They were designed to be short and sweet, but could certainly be extended into the classroom. For example, students could take the products of their gallery exercises, whether it's photographs or drawings, and present them exhibition style in the classroom, adding explanatory wall captions. Or they could do so virtually via a digital presentation platform. One called VoiceThread is what was used for classes that took place at the Yale University Art Gallery. I hope you'd feel free to use them tailored to your own museum, audience, and whatever their specific curricula happens to be. And I would suggest, if you are a museum educator and you want to tap into this audience, that you attend lectures and public talks by STEM professors to find out what they're studying and what their students are studying. Introduce yourself and even invite them to the museum. We held a lunchtime meeting for STEM department chairs at the Art Gallery at Yale and followed that with a guided tour of the galleries. And for many of them, it was their first visit to the art museum. And at the end of it, they were just brimming with ideas for how to visually engage their students therein. So, that's me, that's my email address. I'd love to stay in touch and hear from anybody who has experience or ideas in this area. I don't have handouts, but I do have a copy of an article from the Yale Daily News that reports on how some of these STEAM initiatives are now taking root at Yale. So I have it at the front table, and I hope you'll grab a copy on the way out. Thank you very much for listening.